Business Alliance to go and find funding for the projects that were enumerated and discussed at the prison board. Right? And we said repeatedly, if there isn't any money from the federal government to pursue this, then we can't do it locally because we don't have the money. But as far as the decision by ICE, many times before the federal government enters into an arena, they float trial balloons, and I propose that that is a trial balloon to see what the reaction is from the public. But it has been the stated purpose for that we've been made aware of, that the Obama administration now seeks to consolidate and regionalize ICE facilities and remove them from some of the smaller counties that are participating now to house the inmates that are awaiting deportation. They feel that there's economies of scale. They feel that they can also get better treatment for the inmates. The coordination with Pike County is based on the laurels and the kudos we've received for the exercise of correction professionalism up at that correctional facility. And they want to use us as a model or a prototypical jail to have that duplicated or replicated throughout the United States or wherever they put these regional facilities. We would like to be first in the queue to say, if you're going to consider this new way of doing business, rather than lose the ICE inmates and the revenue that would be at a deficit then to the county, we would like you to entertain examining Pike County based on its professionalism and based on its track record to do that development here, which would benefit us in other ways, because they would expand, remediate, and improve our wastewater treatment plant. They would allow us to have a new potable water system. That's all in that proposal. And again, this is a proposal. No ticky, no surety. We don't know if there's any money out there. But the people we're dealing with would go to our elected representatives, and if they were to buy into it and sign on to it, then they would have to get the blessing of the President, I presume, or the Secretary, Janet Napolitano, who would then distribute this information down the chain of command to the people involved to actually make that become a reality. I think I have it in the right perspective. Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, I understand where that's coming from. Have either the prison board or the commissioners been in communication with any officials from ICE about this, specifically about it?
I have. I've been invited to Washington on October 30th to go down and review. They're calling it an industrial day because they're shifting the way they build out, and there's a planning session on that particular day. It's a one-day event. So I'm planning to go there through ICE on that particular day. They listen, hear, and explore whether this may be a reality or may not be a reality, whether there's money or no money available. Now, I don't know that that's all going to come out of that particular meeting, but see what they have to say.
This environment is evolutionary. We're walking through it slowly and with circumspection to determine whether or not there's funding available for all these projects that were identified.
Yeah.
Until somebody comes forward with money and a philosophy to make this become a reality, then as it's stated in motion, this board can't proceed. I'm willing to support. I'm sorry.
I think what's important, though, with that way the motion is formed, is we have a pressing need in this county for our court system. I see the judge here. And obviously, that sets paramount in his mind that that's more of a project for him than probably the ICE environment. But we're looking, and have been looking, in January, or in March of this year, we sent a proposal to both Congressman Carney, Specter, and Casey on all these projects, looking for funding. And we've got to move forward and find other forms of revenue. And if this person or any other consultant, and I'll be very blunt about that, if any other consultant comes forward and says, I can find money, we're not going to turn it down for any of these particular projects.
Well, you know, some of these projects are really in the embryo stage. I mean, and maybe we're putting the cart before the horse, but if SBA can, or as Harry said, if any entity can locate federal, state, or whatever funds to assist in any of these projects, we have to sit down, obviously, and define these projects, and we have to prioritize them. Like a juvenile detention center, through January 1st, we've only had 13 teens in juvenile detention. So obviously, we cannot just build a juvenile detention facility for Pike County. As Ed Joyce from Probation says, we don't have enough teens to need a juvenile detention facility. It's a regional program. We talked with a couple counties years ago that just never went anywhere, because when you sit down with other counties, they have their own internal priorities, and it just didn't go anywhere. But that would be a project that we'd have to, if money's available, sit down with Wayne, maybe Monroe Carbon, and say, hey, look, can we decide how to build this, how to operate it, where the funds come from, who shares what? I mean, that's really hasn't even been explored yet.
Jim, I don't think that there's any one funding source that would accommodate the construction of all these different projects.
No.
I think there's multiple funding sources, but in our limited experiences in Pike County, we don't know how the labyrinth of the federal government and where to explore the money. We don't know how it works. So we're enlisting the support of people that do this for a living to go out there and try and find different funding sources that would accommodate and accomplish these different projects once they're defined and once we all agree about them. One is not a predicate to the other.
Correct.
How did the relationship between SBA and the county come about? Did the county seek out the services of SBA, or was it the other way?
About 18 months ago, and don't hold me to an exact date and time, our warden was approached by SBA, and whether or not the county would allow SBA to do feasibility studies. There were applications made by SBA to DCED for funding of feasibility studies, and we're not even certain if they were funded. They might have advanced in these areas on their own without funding, but to do a prototypical jail. And at that time, we said if there's no cost to the county, there's no contractual obligations, there's no extension of liability, that we permitted them to proceed to do that at their own risk, whether or not they found the money. And they've done that, and this has taken on progressive steps of development in consultation, not just with the warden and the commissioners, but the president judge has been an active participant in this. And we're at the stage now, as a result of ICE changing their philosophy on how they want to proceed with detention, and also with the $789 billion, I believe it is, it might be 787, and what's $2 billion in that. With that money floating out there, most of it being unused and untapped as of this juncture, they said, go find the money. Let's see if, in fact, the federal government wants to put their money where their mouth is. And if they do, then we have some very, very challenging decisions to make. Yes, sir.
Also, I think everyone's aware of the fact that one of these projects, the EMS training facility, we obviously, as a board, have approved that. We're going to break ground for that next spring, I believe. And we do have funding in place for that. We have most of the funding in place. Now, if we can get more funding to add on to what we have and to replace some of what we're going to be using, which we'd rather maybe not use, that's fine. But that's one project, you know, we're going to be looking for funding for, but we have made a decision and we're moving forward on that.
That one actually has more credibility to be presented to our legislators than the others, because we've already committed county funds to it, so they see the level of seriousness on behalf of the commissioners in the county. Yes?
Well, before you go, I'm touching on that. Where there is funding already starting to move through the process, this agency would not take a share of that pot, because let's face it, the consultant gets paid based on what they bring in-house. So there are certain funding streams that we are aware of that are already working through the system for that particular project. So that would not be open to them, and that will be spelled out to them in no uncertainty.
And there's no contracts. We haven't even presented with a contract. We're not even at that stage yet. If there's no funding available, and the federal legislators don't want to get behind it and endorse it, there's simply no need to review a contract and pay our solicitor. Thanks.